Content warning for profanity, horror elements, body horror, adult content, and tobacco use. Welcome to Discount Storytime, literature's finest dumpster fire. This week's story is Briar Rose, The Lost First Draft, read by our resident voice actor, Grande. Enjoy!
The story of Briar Rose, also known as Sleeping Beauty, was published in its last form by brothers Jacob and Wilhelm Grimm in 1819. Before that, they had published a version of the story in 1812. However, what most don't know is that before then, there was an even earlier version of the story written in 1809. But that version has been lost to the ages. Fortunately for you, dear listener, our Discount Storytime team found this long-lost text in a remote mountain cabin. The authenticity has been verified and whatnot, and you are the first to hear it. That's the kind of dedication to fine literature you'll find on Discount Storytime. Please enjoy the original Briar Rose by the Brothers Grimm. In the past times, there were a king and a queen who said every day, "Oh, if only we had a child, that would fix our marriage." But they never received one. Then it happened one day while the queen was sitting in her pond bath that a frog crept out of the water onto the ground and said to her, "Hi-ho, my lady, you and the king's wish shall be fulfilled." The queen, who was a modest person, covered herself and asked, "Where did you come from, and what are you talking about?" "You and the king's wish shall be fulfilled, and you shall conceive a child, a daughter," croaked the frog. "How do you know this? I mean, no offense, but you're a frog." The frog smiled widely. "Yes, I'm but a humble frog, but I've closely followed every one of your ovulation cycles. Very closely. And I've watched many a thing, me lady." The queen noticed the little frog hid a pair of binoculars behind him. "What do you mean, you've watched many a thing?" "One can see it in your eyes, how much you and the king love each other. But more than that, I've watched how your lovemaking is so much more than thrusting penetration." "What?" "My little froggy eyes have seen how you and the king find sweet release in your sexual desires through experimentation and exploration of each other, using touch, using mouths." The queen quickly stepped out of the pond and dressed, but the frog kept talking. "The playful teasing! Oh, how that cranks up the erotic excitement!" "That's enough," said the queen. Even the other forest animals were uncomfortable. The frog stared off and mumbled about powerful thighs and glistening sweat and all the nipples. Finally dressed, the queen stormed away as the frog mumbled something about reverse cowgirl. And so, as the creepy frog predicted, the king and queen had a baby girl they named Briar Rose. Some would say she was the most beautiful little girl in all the land. But, dear listeners, I'm not going to bullshit you. She was okay-ish. I will not be mean and call a baby ugly. She had a face that was somewhat tolerable. Let's just say that. The king and queen's skin didn't crawl when they held their baby, and that's good enough, right? The king was so happy for his baby daughter, who, if she weren't royalty, might be considered somewhere between mediocre and ghoulish. The king was so happy, he ordered a grand celebration with the royal harpsichord cat. He invited his relatives and friends from all over the kingdom. He also invited the wise fairies so they would be kindly disposed towards the child. There were 13 wise fairies, and the king invited 12 of them. He conveniently left the 13th wise fairy out of the loop, as she always hit reply all on any royal message. It just made a headache for the royal messengers, who were already threatening to unionize. The feast was celebrated with great splendor, and at its conclusion, the wise fairies presented the child with their magic gifts. One fairy tried to do something with Briar Rose's eyes, specifically that one dead eye that followed you and never blinked. Another fairy tried toning down Briar Rose's, well, we'll just say, special baby jabber. Maybe they could tone that down a bit, just so everyone's spines didn't go cold hearing it. And the fairy spells kept going, while also trying not to upset the proud king and queen. The 11th fairy had just pronounced her blessing of making Briar Rose smell less sulphury when the 13th fairy suddenly walked in. She wore black jorts and wanted to avenge herself for not having been invited. And without greeting anyone or even looking at them, she cried out in a loud voice, "In the princess's 15th year, she shall prick herself, vomit a spindle, and fall over dead." Without saying another word, she turned around, dumped a plate of mini corn dogs into her purse, and left the hall. Everyone was horrified, and the 12th wise fairy, Debbie, who had not yet offered her wish, stepped forward. Because she was unable to undo the wicked wish, but only to soften it, she said, "It shall not be her death. The princess will only fall into 100-year deep sleep." The other fairies whispered, "What the shit, Debbie? We could have had this problem taken care of." Debbie smacked her forehead and groaned, "Ay, ay, ay." The king, wanting to rescue his dear child, issued an order that all spindles in the entire kingdom shall be burned. Baby Briar Rose became a toddler and discovered her favorite pastime, hunting peasants for their skin. Then, as she became a tween, she found her second favorite pastime, wearing dresses made of peasant skin. These skin dresses had to stay moisturized, or else they would crack. And moisturizer wasn't cheap, especially not in this economy. So all tax revenue went to keeping Briar Rose's assortment of peasant skin dresses moisturized. On Briar Rose's 15th birthday, the village somehow accidentally had spinning wheels all over the goddamn place. As Briar Rose skittered along the castle tower's ceiling, she saw a small room. Inside sat an old woman in black jorts with a spindle busily spinning her flax.
"Good day, old woman,"
said Briar Rose.
"What are you doing there?"
"I am spinning flax, vermit to make jorts," said the old woman, nodding her head.
"What is that thing that is so merrily bouncing about?"
asked the girl, taking hold of the spindle, for she too wanted to spin. She had no sooner touched the spindle when the magic curse was fulfilled, and she pricked herself in the finger. The instant that she felt the prick, she fell onto a bed that was standing there, and she lay there in a deep sleep. The king and queen were so saddened, they ordered the wise fairies to put everyone in a deep sleep so they could all wake up again and be with little Briar Rose. The fairies lied and told the king they didn't have enough magical powers to do that for the entire kingdom. But Fairy Debbie opened her big mouth. Of course we can do that. Watch! Debbie cast a spell to put the entire village to sleep, only to wake up at the same moment as Briar Rose. The other fairies shook their head. Damn it, Debbie! We could have had a break from it. Debbie smacked her forehead and groaned, "Ay, ay, ay." The king and queen fell asleep, and all of their attendants as well. The horses fell asleep in their stalls, the dogs in the courtyard, the pigeons on the roof, the flies on the walls, and even the fire on the hearth flickered, stopped moving, and fell asleep. The roast stopped sizzling, the wind stopped blowing, and outside the castle not a leaf was stirring in the trees. Everything was quiet, except for a mysterious dripping from the castle tower. The average amount of saliva a person makes is around 750 milliliters per day. That's like a bottle of wine per day or something, but gross. But even grosser is Briar Rose drooled over twice that, what with her extra rows of teeth and such. So over the course of 100 years, that's around 15 million gallons of drool that dripped from her mouth all over the tower floors and stairs. And instead of evaporating like normal drool, her drool congealed into a sticky, gelatinous coating. A legend circulated throughout the land about the sleeping princess, little Briar Rose. Legends also told that from time to time young men came, wanting to force their way up through the tower. However, they didn't succeed, as they could not free themselves from the sticky, gelatinous drool, and died miserably, like in a roach motel. Many long years later, once again, a handsome prince came to the country. He heard an old man telling about the sticky tower. It was said that there was a princess named Little Briar Rose who had been asleep for 100 years, and with her the king and queen and all the royal attendants were sleeping. He also heard that many young men had come and tried to climb the tower stairs, but they had become stuck and died sorrowful deaths. The handsome prince said, "I'm not afraid. I will go there and see the princess, Little Briar Rose." However much the good old man tried to dissuade him, the handsome prince would not listen to his words. The 100 years was about to pass, and the day had come when little Briar Rose was to awaken. In the courtyard, the handsome prince saw the horses and spotted hunting dogs lying there asleep, and on the roof, the pigeons perched with their little heads tucked under their wings. He walked inside the castle and saw all the attendants lying asleep in the hall, and above them, near the throne, the king and queen were lying. He walked on still further, and it was so quiet he could hear his own breath. Finally, he came to the tower steps covered in gelatinous drool. Undeterred, the handsome prince began climbing. At first, the climb was easy, and he wondered why so many others had struggled. But his feet stuck more and more with each step. About halfway up, he started noticing what appeared to be bodies, or at least princely clothes filled with empty skin. He was about to turn around and leave, but remembered boasting to the old man of his own bravery. And so the handsome prince continued on. Almost at the top, the handsome prince lost his footing on one step and fell face forward into the drool. He broke his fall with his ungloved hands and heard a sizzle before he saw smoke rising from his hands. The pain only lasted a moment, and his nerves dissolved almost immediately from the sticky gel. And without pain, he could notice how soft his hands had become. "That makes my skin really moist," said the prince before dying, which made the handsome prince's last spoken word moist. You're welcome. Yes, Briar Rose's drool was a great skin moisturizer, but dissolved all other tissue. Briar Rose awoke from her 100-year slumber, and she found the greatest gift of all, dozens and dozens of prince skins, perfectly moisturized to make into skin dresses. If this didn't make little Briar Rose giggle with delight. At the same time, the king awoke, and the queen, and all the royal attendants, and they looked around at one another in amazement. The horses in the courtyard stood up and shook themselves. The hunting dogs jumped and wagged their tails. The pigeons on the roof pulled their little heads out from under their wings, looked around, and flew into the field. The fire in the kitchen rose up, broke into flames, and cooked the food. The roast began to sizzle once again. The villagers awoke to the sound of Briar Rose's giggles and thought, "We're f***ed." But they were relieved in a sickened sort of way to learn that Briar Rose had enough prince skin to use for her dresses, at least for a little while. So the villagers were, temporarily spared? I guess? I mean, that's something, right? I mean, that could be sort of a happy ending? Maybe? The end. Dear Lord.
A discount story time, discount idea. You don't have to be in nature to enjoy the benefits. Try simply thinking about nature, or watching a nature documentary on your couch, or eating pizza poppers while watching that movie about chainsaw monkeys. Thank you for listening. We at Discount Storytime hope you enjoyed Briar Rose, the first draft. Just to let you know, dear listeners, that around mid-December, Discount Storytime, the podcast will be coming to an end. But fear not, it is coming to an end because a new podcast from the creators of Discount Storytime will be starting up. We don't have a name for it yet, workshopping a few possibilities, and I'll let you know as we get closer. Definitely we'll give you the link and all of that. It will be more horror-based with dark humor, so not all that different from what we've done here and there at Discount Storytime, but really trying to focus in on the horror component, but still hopefully giving some laughs and some chuckles along the way. So we'll keep you updated on that. And until next week, be sure to play nice with others, be super duper kind to yourself, and as always, remember to laugh. Bye. Hello, awesome listeners. I've moved the show off Patreon and will not be putting content behind paywalls. I think everyone deserves access to this half-assed content. Having said that, if you're enjoying Discount Storytime, please help keep the show running if you can. There's a support link in the show notes where you can contribute a few dollars each month and you can cancel anytime. Another way to support Discount Storytime is through word of mouth. By telling others about the show, you are both helping the show and spreading smiles. Now that's a win-win-win if you ask me. And regardless, thank you so much for being a listener. Bye.